welcome back to Coaches at Crown Brew Getting Coffee. I'm Kerry Martin with my guest this week, Mr. Stan Stout, the boys golf coach at Marion High School. Before that, I want to thank Crown Brew again for letting us use their facility to have a discussion, coaches having a conversation about their games, their sports, and how they do it. I want to thank Swinford Media Group and thank Ross Swinford especially for allowing us to do this and taking care of all the behind-the-scenes stuff. I want to thank my buddies at Adrenaline Fundraising for their sponsorship. And if you've got fundraising needs of any type, no matter what your program, junior high, high school, grade school, they can help with your fundraising needs. They're the best I've ever worked with. And they would love to hear from you. Jeff Scott and his buddy Matt can take care of you. We're going to jump right into it and get started. I'm going to talk a little bit about Stan Stout's bio. Stan, welcome. Glad to have you here, my man.
Thank you so much.
Stan Stout is the Marion boys golf coach. Has been for 23 seasons. 21 seasons, my mistake. Retiring after this season, which we'll talk about towards the end. He himself was a state qualifier in high school in 1984.
1984.
As a coach, he coached multiple South 7 championships. He had 4 state qualifiers, Jarrett Brewer twice, Brendan Lewis twice, Isaac Hammett once, Jack Howry once, and you coached state champion Jarrett Brewer in 2011.
It was quite the ride.
We're going to talk about that, so congratulations on all of that and welcome. And let's start, Stan, with the very beginning. I'd love to get some background, let people know something about you and who you are. So you grew up in Marion?
Born and raised.
Tell me something about that.
Oh my goodness. I lived over by Pyramid Park, right behind the high school. Moved there when I was in first grade. Went to Longfellow School. Went to the junior high. Went to the high school. The only time I left was to go away to college, and I had a 2-year stint when I lived in Mount Vernon when I taught up there. And my family was here, my church was here, my friends were here, so I just moved right back down. Yeah. So I have not been gone very long from this dear town of mine.
That is awesome. I think one time you told me that growing up, much like my growing up, big neighborhood games like
oh my goodness, wiffle ball. We had a game, you know, back in the 70s, 80s, you know, in college football, the wishbone was a big thing. And I remember one of the craziest games looking back on it. The older boys, they were all like 3 years older than us. They said, let's play the wishbone. And what I didn't realize at the time is we were always on offense. And so one of us would be the quarterback, and we had 2 running backs, and no matter when we turned, we just got plowed. So, you know, it never did work quite as good as it did in the college game. But, my gosh, we would play for hours. Great neighborhood growing up.
And I don't know how much kids do that compared to our childhoods, but I grew up, whatever season it was, that's what we played, basketball, baseball, wiffle ball, whatever it was, football. When did you start playing golf? Like when did that come into your life?
Probably the summer between 6th and 7th grade. Oh. Yeah, so my dad, he said, you know what, you're pretty good at hitting things, you know, wiffle balls and baseballs and everything. Yeah. So he invited me to go out to Fairway Golf Club, right out there by where we live. Yep. And I hit a couple good balls, and I was kind of hooked on it. And then all of a sudden, it went south really quickly, like on about hole number 5. And I remember, you know, it was my first ever round of golf, and after about, you know, chunking 2 or 3 in a row, I hit one right into a tree, and I laid my club down about 30 feet away. It didn't take long. And my dad looked at me. He said, "This is a gentleman's game, son." He said, "You'll never throw another club." And you know what? I really haven't since that very first round. But I mean, golf, it's such a maddeningly beautiful game, which I'm sure we will get into.
That is a great way to describe it. Maddening beautiful, because it is the most humbling thing. And the moment you feel like, well, first of all, you're right. It has an addictive quality that when you make a putt, you make a chip, you hit a drive, there's something addictive about it. But there's also something that fails to repeat itself well, you know,
and
often.
That is the secret.
Yeah, and then one time I was older. I was probably in my early 20s, and I was throwing a fit over the way I was playing. And I'll never forget something my dad said. My dad said, "You don't play or practice enough to be that angry." And I've never been angry playing ever again.
Yep.
Because he was exactly right. You see pros on the tour struggling, And yet, if they have reason to complain because this is their life.
Yeah.
Who was I to say I should be better than this?
I know.
So,
Well, if I can, I'll interject a little story about that. After that happened, you know me. I am probably one of the easiest going, go with the flow kind of guys
Yes,
around.
you are.
And I pride myself on that. And when I was on our high school team, I did not play varsity until my junior, senior year.
wow.
I was JV my freshman, sophomore year. And I played with an intense bunch of young men.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we are talking, they took it, I don't want to say I didn't take it seriously, but they lived and died with their rounds. And myself, on the other hand, I would go out and just play as well as I could.
Yeah.
And Coach Reed, whenever I'd come in after hole number 9 or whatever, he'd say, "What'd you shoot, Stan? What'd you shoot? Come on, how'd you do?" And I'd say, "Coach Reed, isn't it just an awesome day to be outside?" Or, and I wouldn't let on how I shot.
Yeah.
And, I may have shot a 51, I may have shot a 38, but I always said, "Coach Reed, it was a little breezy out there today, wasn't it?" And then I'd go on and lead him with my round. And so he nicknamed me the weatherman.
the weatherman.
And that's about as, and again, not that I wasn't grinding and trying my best, but I remember what my dad said. He said, "You're going to have fun doing this or you're not going to do it."
Amen.
And so,
great
that's
attitude.
that's
That's
kind of,
awesome.
I was the weatherman.
So tell me about Jim Reed. Jim
Oh,
Reed
my
was your
goodness.
coach. Tell me about Jim Reed.
He was a very good coach about developing a family.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I really, really remember about our golf team. We didn't have the facilities. We had no driving range. We had a little putting green. So it wasn't nearly as much about, let's go hit 200 balls today and work on your swing. He would get us all together. We had some orange pro staffs that Jerry Pate used to play. And he would pull out a little thing of orange pro staffs and he'd say, "All right, boys, we're going to go up and we're going to putt 18 holes." He said, "It's cutthroat." And we would do games like that,
Yeah.
and then he'd give the winner a golf ball and everything, and just he loved his job. He loved being around us boys.
And you could tell.
Oh yes, I mean
Yeah.
totally. And
Yeah.
that was one of the coolest things about high school golf, is just that the way that he could get us to compete. Of course, here I am with a big grin on my face, and some of the other boys were bending putters in half. I'll say, "I'll take that pro staff today."
Yeah,
But it was such a
That's
good time.
great. That's
just
great.
such a good time. But that's what I remember most about my high school golf. It wasn't tons of instruction because we didn't have the facilities. You
Yeah,
know what we did?
right.
We played.
Yeah.
That's every day we played. And sometimes he'd divide us up and we'd have a team game, or sometimes we would be qualifying. But that's what we did back then. We played.
So you were state qualifier in 1984. What is that, your senior year?
That was my senior year.
Your senior year. Tell me about that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because later on I'm sure we're going to get into some of the nuances and the craziness about this game. And I must say that I committed one of the golfer's cardinal sins going into the postseason. I had just come off conference. We'd won conference that year at Wren Lake, one of my best weatherman moments. I mean, some of our boys were having a rough time that day, and I had kind of teed off toward the end, so I was one of the last ones to come in. And up at Wren Lake, probably one of the rounds I was most proud of ever, I shot an 82, and I counted for our team that day.
Yeah.
And Coach Reed was just ecstatic, and I was so glad to be able to participate in the scoring. But I had noticed that day, I always played a little fade. It kind of went off to the right a little bit. And that day, it was going a little higher and a little shorter. And some of the kids I was playing with, they were popping it by me quite a bit. So one thing you never, ever do in the middle of the season is change your swing. I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to learn how to hit a draw. So between conference and our postseason, I started tinkering with my grip.
Yeah.
I started tinkering with my stance. And remember, we did not really have a driving range.
Right.
You did all this on the course.
On the course, yeah.
So needless to say, we got up to sectionals. I think it was somewhere in Edwardsville. I could no more hit the fairway, save my life. So I limped around with like a 98.
Yeah.
I was high man. So come state, which is like just the next week, I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? So I got up there and I thought, I'm going to try hit my fade again. So I would open my stance up a little bit, hit my fade, except I had done enough draw things. Now it was going straight left. So needless to say, I kid you not, I ended up my senior year state qualifying in the tournament. I ended up trying to finish out the round hitting 7 irons.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
I tried to change my swing and it left.
What a great lesson.
Oh.
I mean, it's something I'm sure you've conveyed to your kids, your
Yes.
players. Tell this story. Look what I did.
I
because,
do.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's one thing I tell the kids. You know, golf season, it's super intense and it's super short.
yeah.
You hit it in August and you do not stop until October. And it's just bang, 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 bang. And I tell the kids, we're going to work with the swing you bring
Amen.
into this season.
Yep.
And inevitably, every year, 1 or 2 kids will
Yep.
balk at that idea. And I'll say,
Tinker.
kids, yes, you never tinker in the season.
Well,
you just don't do it.
Yeah, I don't want my quarterback changing his delivery week 3.
Yes.
I mean, we're going to deal
mean-
with whatever you're doing. We're going to deal with it, but don't change it now
No.
unless it's just disastrous. But you weren't playing bad. You just decided to tweak it a little
I
bit.
wanted to tweak it because,
Yeah.
like I said, that fade was getting a little high
Yeah.
and a little shorter. And I thought, man, if I can just turn this into a draw, you look out. Well, don't ever.
Yeah.
Right, not right before the big stage.
I'll write that down. Yeah.
Yes, don't.
So you're a smart kid.
Yes.
Obviously, you told me you're on Scholar Bowl,
Yes.
and that was your other activity in high school, and you thought about engineering.
I
You thought
did.
about post high school. You tinkered with maybe a little bit. Speaking of tinkered, playing some college golf, but that didn't really manifest itself. But
I was too busy studying.
too busy, which is awesome. And you thought about engineering, but then you made a change. What brought about the change?
Well, I'll tell you about that. I believe it was my summer before my senior year, and then my summer after when I was at John A. Logan, I had the pleasure of working for Glenn Clarida here in town at his engineering firm.
Right.
And I had an absolute ball. I mean, I got to survey, I got to draft, and you know, as for part-time work back then, it was absolutely phenomenal. And I got to thinking, you know, this might be something really cool for me to go into. So I went to Johnny Logan, started majoring in engineering, and made it. You know how it is at Logan. You just take all your generals.
Sure.
I was taking Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, Physics 1, Physics 2, Physics 3, Chemistry, and all this other stuff. And then I started doing some research, and you know, engineering was kind of neat. But you know my personality. I got to thinking, am I meant to be that precise for 40 hours a week for 40 years? And I thought I would be good at it, but I don't know if I'd be fulfilled. And so we were over at John A. Logan in this room up above the library. Lots of studying goes on up there. Lots of cramming, lots of praying. I mean, there is prayer in schools.
Yeah.
At least there was back in the 80s.
That's funny, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I used to help my fellow math and engineering people with their calculus.
Right.
And they'd all come in, they'd say, Stan, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what's going on? Because I had it in high school, and so I had heads up on them. And I would just lay it out for them and say, now listen, don't look at this, look at it this way. And they started saying, you have to teach this stuff.
That's awesome.
You are amazing.
That is awesome.
And you know, I at that point I thought, you know, I'm having a ball doing this. Light bulb.
Yeah.
And so at that point I thought, you know, when I go on down to Southwest Baptist University to finish up, I think I'm going to change over to math education.
Wow, that's awesome.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, those little moments where you find out you are better served and gifted to do something, whether it's happenstance, the Lord's direction, but something clicks in your mind and you say, I got it.
Yes, and I would have been a good engineer. There's no
course,
doubt in my mind.
yeah.
But at that moment, I thought, you know what? This would be fun.
One man that you and I both know well one time said Stan Stout has the brain of a NASA engineer, but he's teaching math at Marion High School, and we're blessed to have him. And I thought
I know who that is.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
It's one of my teammates from high school.
Yeah, and Steve Smith said that about you, and I'll never forget that. And I thought, well, that is so cool, and that we are blessed to have you there. And you got your first job once you got through the teacher education program at Casey Middle School in Mount Vernon. You were there 7 years?
7 years.
7 years. I thought you said you coached boys track.
Oh yes. You know how when you get your first job,
I do know.
they'll say, "We'll hire you. Do you know how to coach track?"
Yeah. Or even if you don't.
Yes. Well, and I was in the latter. I said, "No, sir, but I will learn."
Yeah, I got the job at Sparta. I was hired as a football assistant, but I also became the wrestling coach, assistant wrestling coach, and assistant baseball coach. I'd never seen a wrestling match in my life.
That's right. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
So, but you learn, and it's still working with kids, and so you had that experience. How'd that go?
We did very well.
Yeah,
I mean, you know how it is, especially junior high track.
Yeah.
You know what 90% of the battle is? Recruiting.
Yeah, and you get all like kids out.
Oh my goodness!
Yep.
And we recruited, and we had kids out there that they hardly had a pair of shorts or socks to their name, but you could tell in PE. We went and talked to the PE teachers, and they said, him, and I mean we were a force.
Yeah.
But a gentleman named Charles Barlow taught science with me there, and he and I both coached track. And both of us spent a lot of time in the library with these old dusty track manuals, trying to figure out how to teach handoffs and where to start and how close. And that is a very important thing of life that I really feel is lost on a lot of these kids these days. Yeah. Just the value of research.
Amen, brother.
Oh my goodness, because we were very adept.
Yeah.
I mean, we ended up being adept track coaches.
I got thrust into coaching track. Well, I wanted to coach the track. My first track job was kind of, we need you to do this. My softball job, we need you to do this. My wrestling job, we need you to do this. Okay. And there was a lot of research that went into finding out, okay, how can I best serve these kids? I got to know what's going on. I had to wrestle with the kids to learn how to wrestle because I had to figure it out. It's hard. So I know exactly what you mean, that sometimes you just got to put your nose to the grindstone and say, in those days, it was go to the library.
Yes.
Get a book off the shelf.
And you put in something to the regional library, and you get an old VHS tape.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Put that in.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yep.
You coach softball too?
Loved it.
I never knew that. I did too. I love coaching softball.
Oh my goodness.
I would have kept
that
doing
was
it.
one of my favorite positions ever.
Yeah.
Charles Barlow and I, again, when we got done with the track, we actually had some teachers who asked to do the track, and we gave them a high five, and we decided to do softball.
Yeah.
That's the only time I have ever coached girls.
Yeah.
How rewarding.
Oh, I loved it.
I mean,
I did.
No offense to my boys golfers or boys anywhere. The girls are a lot more of a sponge.
Yeah.
In my experience, I mean, they really, really, really took what we said to heart. They were a lot easier to teach fundamentals to.
Yeah.
And you talk about strategy, because back in the day, and I'm sure it's still the same way, every girl wanted to be a windmill fireballer. It'd go halfway up the backstop, just a bit outside, and everything else. And one of our girls, she could throw it. She could throw it through a brick wall, but you didn't know which wall it was going to be. And I said, you know what? Why don't you lose the windmill? And she said, well, my pitching coach. I said, no. You can go to your pitching coach and practice, but I said, for us, why don't you lose the windmill and just see what happens? She went over and I showed her. You can put a good little zip on it. She threw me 10 warm-up balls. The next day, she went in, threw like a one-hitter.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, her eyes were this big. I said, you see what happened?
She said, you're a
You
genius.
did not walk people.
Yeah.
You struck out a few.
Yeah.
You put the ball in play. You let our defense work. I mean, it was phenomenal.
That's awesome. What a great story.
Yeah, I mean.
But I'm going to say this about your coaching, is I've been around you enough. I play golf with you. I've been around you. I would say one of your greatest gifts is your ability to take the complex and make it simple. And I mean that. And I think you would agree with that.
Totally.
I think that's a perfect example of what you just did. You took something that was complex to a young lady and you made it simple. You did that when you were teaching the math upstairs at Logan. The first time I golfed with you, you made me better because you just said, stop thinking and just, okay. And the things that you told me, I'm still doing when I golf because I thought you simplified golf can be complicated. Your feet, your arm, your elbow, your this, your grip. And all of a sudden you said, stop, and I'm like, oh, wow. So that story just manifests again what I was reinforces. I think what I think when I think of you is the gift you have. You come back to Marion in 1998. You come to the Marion Junior High, and I don't. Did you coach anything?
No, and I even asked. I said, "Do you have any coaching vacancies?" And at that time, they said no. They brought me back because they were a middle school back then,
right?
And I had 7 years of experience at Mount Vernon in the middle school concept, and so they said no. In fact, we would rather you just kind of focus on helping our teachers get used to this concept. I mean, it's a different. Great concept, by the way. I know that's a discussion for another day, but I totally loved it.
But then in 2003, while you're still at the junior high, you became the boys golf coach.
Yes, Coach North retired.
Coach North. And I thought this was fascinating. You said Marion has had three golf coaches in 51 years.
Yep.
And I said,
it's a pretty good legacy, isn't it?
They're like the Steelers.
Right? Yeah, who we got? Tomlin and Knoll.
Cower and Chuck Knoll. That's it.
That's it.
And I for almost that same type of span, if not that same span. So that's a pretty cool legacy to be a part of.
It has been special.
Yeah,
it really
because
has
so many programs have a revolving door to them, and yet 3 coaches in 51 years. So I want to talk about your approach to coaching golf. And I just said you have a way of simplifying it. So as a golf coach, your kids come out. What's your approach to teaching the game to kids that are already 15, 16, 17 years of age? Okay.
Well, it's funny that you said that. One of my mantras in my mind that I've always used is the KISS principle when I coach. And that stands for Keep It Simple, Stanley. And that's what I try to do when I coach. And it doesn't matter if the boy is shooting 60 and never played before, or if it's someone like Jarrett or Brendan or Jack or Isaac, one of my state qualifiers, I can still keep it simple to them. And my teaching technique is basically, I'm going to try to remove parts from your swing rather than add parts.
I like that a lot.
The simpler, back and through is better. I've always been a big proponent, except for when I lost my mind in 1984 before state. And after that, I really did start learning this. I don't care really what your swing looks like, but there's like a magic 18 inches at the bottom of the swing. And if you've got the club moving down the path and it's square, you're going to be able to hit the ball and find it again.
Wow,
I mean, if you think about that, I mean, that's the only 2 things you really have to worry about. And, the swing's just right there, right there. So, I'm big on impact zone. And then the other one that is so hard to get through to my kids, I am a huge proponent in a pre-shot routine in the aspect. Now, I do it a little differently. Like, you've played with me before. It doesn't take me long to hit the ball.
It does not.
It does not. But what I do is when I am walking up to my ball, I'm walking straight up behind it. I'm looking already where I want the ball to go. I'm drawing a line from where I want my ball to end up back through to my golf ball. And when I get up there, I am looking for a blade of grass. I'm looking for a little piece of mud about 8 inches in front of my ball. You set the club down at that close target. You just get in, and you're at least lined up the right way. I always tell my kids it's aim small, miss small.
Ah, yeah.
And so the smaller you can that you can hone in on, even if you miss, it's better than just walking up there going, where are you going to hit it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, show me where. And I mean, it's so hard for high school boys to buy into that. Like, I always start every year, the first practice of the year. I'll say, all right, boys, get a pre-shot routine, pick a target right in front of your golf. And the boys that have been on the team before, they start finishing my speech for everyone else.
That's great.
Yet, 5 minutes into it, when I'm walking down the line, I turn around and they're going, doo, 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 doo. It looks like a Gatling gun going off out there. And I walk down and I say, what are you aiming at?
Yeah.
Oh. But that's you just get a couple fundamentals like that, and it just really, really, really goes a long way. And my last secret that I try to do, not only on the golf team but in my classroom and with my family, I try to be a cheerleader.
Yeah.
I mean,
Stay positive.
Oh, totally.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, it really doesn't matter how bad it gets. They know it's bad.
Yeah.
They
They
do not need me pointing it out. And
Well, it's funny you said aim small, miss small. I taught that with my quarterbacks about being specific about the shoulder you're throwing to or the target you're throwing to. And I asked them, I said, now you've seen the movie The Patriot. Mel Gibson says that in The Patriot when they're aiming at the redcoats. And now I've gotten to the point where I have kids go, I've never seen that movie. And I'm
I know.
like,
Is that on VCR tape?
So, but anyway, the premise is the same though, that if you want to be accurate, aim small, miss small. And I think when I first say it, they're like, I have no idea what that means. And you explain like, oh, be specific about your target. What a cool thing though.
Yes.
And you think it's important to have that same routine, almost like a free throw shooter, have that same routine
definitely.
Every time you approach the ball. That's really cool.
And another thing that you may remember about playing golf with me is I don't take practice swings.
No, you do not.
I do not. And again, the reason is, I've prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, what am I going to garner by getting up there and taking a practice swing? The worst thing that could happen is I take that swing, I say, oh, that was perfect.
I know. See, I always
So,
think,
I get up there, I find my alignment spot, I come back, I put that club right down, and all I'm looking at is that spot right in front of the ball. I'm done. I mean, I just got to bring the club back and push it through. And the only problem is it doesn't go nearly as far as it used to.
yeah. Well,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. But I love that simplification of what can be a very complex process, hitting a golf ball, and it can be intimidating to people. Now, in your opinion, what is the biggest factor in the level of improvement from a kid that comes in as a freshman to when they're a senior? Tell me, what is the thing that brings about the greatest improvement?
I was lucky enough when I was in taught at Casey, I was lucky enough to take some graduate programs through Rockford College, and they were called Performance Learning System courses, and best courses I have ever had. There's a free plug out there for Performance Learning System, and there was a gentleman who taught a lot of our courses. His name was Don Garrett, and he was a science teacher from Carmi, and so he was hired out to teach the courses, and he said something that, I mean, it shook me to the core, and it basically changed the way that I coach, the way that I teach. And he said, listen, if you want to get good at something, he said, I've got 4 words for you: time, patience, practice, and repetition. And if you think about that, if I have a kid coming in and he can't break 60, you know what he has to do? He has to take some time. He has to research. He has to watch some YouTube videos. He has to talk to me. He has to start swinging. You know what he has to have? Patience, because it's not going to go well in the beginning.
Right.
You can't get down. You have to stay patient and stay the course. Practice. You have to start practicing your good habits. Again, I don't care if it's in my classroom, the way I teach. I don't care if it's playing golf, the way I coach. I don't care if it's parenting my kids. I'm probably falling down in that area. My gosh, that's the hardest thing I've done yet.
Yeah.
But you keep practicing.
Yeah.
And then when it clicks, you repeat it. And you repeat it.
That's
and you
wonderful,
repeat
Stan.
it. And
That's
you
awesome.
repeat it. And all of a sudden, you are adept. You're starting to excel at whatever you're doing. And so that's what I tell these boys. I said, listen, golf is a tough game because it takes so much time. You do need to practice. You're going to get so frustrated. And, it takes patience because you are going to lose your mind at times.
Sure.
And then you do need to spend the time to repeat. So my state qualifiers, Jarrett, Brendan, Isaac, Jack,
That's
time,
what they
patience,
did.
practice, repetition.
Yeah, and
it's not a miracle formula.
No, it's not, and that's wonderful, because I think you could take those 4 things and you could put those with anything. And I remember I had a quarterback one year who was throwing every single day. The problem was it was not under supervision.
Yes.
And when I finally was able to work with him when the summer began, he had developed some bad habits, because what he was doing, he was practicing, but he was practicing some things incorrectly. So we had to spend some time pulling it back in. And so I think he just thought time is all that matters. But it isn't just the time you put in. It isn't just the practice you put in. Are you practicing the right way, the right technique?
And that's when you start repeating it. When
That's
you
right.
know it's clicked
That's right.
and you've got it correctly.
Yeah. Well, that's.
I mean, it's big. I mean,
that's-
it's changed my life. I mean,
if we-
so many different areas of my life,
Yeah,
you
if
know,
we
you apply
stop-
that principle.
If we stop now, that is worth someone watching, because that's beautiful. What makes the biggest? Okay, maybe this is kind of a repeat. Oh, but no, the toughest part to teach in golf, in all the phases of golf. What's the toughest part to teach? The part that you say, oh man, this is the biggest challenge I have.
Probably the aspect, kind of like we talked with my unfortunate debacle at state again. These kids, so often, they think they should hit it perfectly every time.
Right.
And they'll get out on the course and a ball will go off to the right.
Yeah.
So the next hole, they start overcorrecting,
Oh.
trying to go back to the left. And you know, you've probably heard the term something like dance with a girl you brought to the prom.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell my boys. I said, now listen, what's going to get you in the most trouble besides lack of competition? See, a lot of my boys I've had over the years, they've never competed in golf. And so when they do walk out onto
Yeah.
the big course, the eyes get big,
Sure.
the mouth gets a little
Yeah.
fuzzy,
Right.
and they kind of lose their minds pretty quickly. But basically, notice how you're hitting the ball. Whether it's 10 balls on the range, you know, you get an idea. Just drop it, pick your point, put a swing on it, look up. Oh, it's going to the right a little bit. Okay, play that. You know what you do? You aim to the left center and let it go. The next day it may be going a little bit the other way, but rather than that, they want to overcorrect. And they want to turn it the other way. Like, if I'm hooking it, coach, I got to slice it. No, you don't. Not right now.
Yeah.
Not right now. Trust me, it does not end well.
So having said that, you got all this stuff, you got all these things, you simplified the game, they've got to get out and play, they've got to get out and practice. They can't overcorrect the mistakes they make, because a bad shot is part of the game. You can't change your swing because of a bad shot. But
you can sure try.
Yeah. Trust me, I've done that.
Yes, that's right.
I love what you told me one time. You said the difference between boys golf and girls golf, because you've worked enough with the girls and the girls side, because they're out there together sometimes. And I love what you told me, and I think this spoke to me. Tell our viewers what you said. Do you remember what you told me? That boys are really into. It's something about hitting a ball a long ways.
Yes.
I got to hit it far, because that equates to good golf.
Yes.
And yet young ladies don't tend to be enamored with the distance their ball goes.
They are totally focused on, I need to make solid contact.
Yeah.
And they will listen. Like I said, they tend to be a little more absorbent of information, and you know, they're more copying than the boys are. You know, boys are by nature so competitive. I don't care what the game is, it turns into, hey, watch this, I'm going to fly this one over the range, and you know, within 10 minutes, which, you know, it's got its time and place where it's fun, but you know, when you're trying to hone in and get a repetitive swing, it's hard to beat coaching a girl.
The number one thing I hear people say when they're talking about their golf game is they rarely talk about how well they're chipping the ball.
Yep.
They tell you how they're getting off the tee.
Yep.
And I know I've played golf with guys that if they don't get off the tee well, their game falls apart, because that to them is the most important thing. You know, scoring is done in the short game, right? I mean, I've been guilty of what those young men are guilty of, wanting to hit the ball. And I told you, the late Ray Kemp, Carterville golf coach, looked at me one time, and I think Ray was a lot like you. I think he simplified the game for me one time. He said, you know, Kerry, what you need to learn how to do, after I wasn't playing well one day with him, he said, you need to play boring golf.
Amen.
I said, boring golf? He goes, yeah, just keep it in the fairway. I'm like, that's probably really good advice.
And then all of a sudden you get done and you think, well, that was kind of fun for a boring round, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there's something about us that doesn't, we want the big shot. And I love that really you want to score.
Well, I have a great story on that too, because I was going to touch on that later when you said the problems, and one of them is the lack of short game practice. And you know, you can do this in your backyard.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't take a big area.
Yeah.
But man, again, that time, patience, practice, repetition, get that touchdown. There's so much feel. There's so much feel around the greens, 100 yards in.
Yep.
And our most valuable player on our high school team, his name was Jay Reese. Jay went on to be a big-time golf coach after his tenure at Marion. And actually, Jarrett played for Jay for a couple of years down at the University of Texas, Arlington. And Jay was self-taught. Well, we were all back then. We didn't have lessons. Jay could get the ball up and down from the bottom of a trash can. I mean, and like I said, we had a very competitive team. So we would go out there to fairway and we'd play for sodas and everything. Yeah. And Jay would, slap a little line drive out there, zing one to the left of the green, and the boys, they're on 20 feet away. They think, I got him. He'd chip it in. Yeah. Or he'd chip it up to that far and putt it, and they'd three-putt. Oh, I just kind of laughed, because I was the weatherman. I knew I didn't have that game. But just Jay made a career out of that. Jay won college tournaments. The wedge, the putter. Jay is a wedge teaching guru now. Oh, wow. I mean, he deals with PGA players.
I need to see
Guess
him.
What he does? Wedge, putter. And, it to say that it covers sins is an understatement. It can actually be the difference between a state champion and somebody who can't even make it out of regionals. I mean, you can hit the ball as far as you want, but man, you get those guys that are magicians with that little wedge and that little chipper and that silly little flat stick. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
absolutely crazy.
It's so true. My older brother is the best golfer of the three boys in our family, and he's much better at the short game than the rest of us. I don't know that he's the longest hitter, but his short game was phenomenal. And I remember I was telling you a story when I go to Topgolf. At my age, I'm still enamored with hitting the long ball, instead of the short scoring areas, and that's just something that's still in me that probably is.
It never goes away.
Never goes away.
It never goes away.
Let's talk about Jarrett real quick. Jarrett's run to win the state. That is a wonderful experience. Great for our school. Great obviously for him, for you as a coach. What an honor to coach a state champion. So, tell me about the kind of golfer he was and his run to state.
Well, at the time, Jarrett was by far and away the best ball striker that I had coached. And what I mean by that is if you've ever watched tour players hit the ball, you know how they hit the ball first, and then about 8 inches in front, you had that beautiful little toupee of a divot flying through there. Jarrett was the first golfer that I ever really coached that had already mastered that perfect little movement of the ball.
When you got him?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, 7th grade, he would be out there on the range. He'd come out, "Hi, Mr. Stout. My name's Jarrett." And I said, "Dude, you want to come play for me now?" I mean, he was so far eaten up with it, but absolutely a killer ball striker. Yeah. And so Jarrett's run, a lot of people don't know this. It started his sophomore year. He made it to state his sophomore year.
Right.
And first time I'd ever been up there. It's up at D.A. Wybring's course up there in Bloomington Normal. Okay. It's ISU's home course. And so we got up there for our practice round, first time we'd ever been there. Beautiful day, 60 degrees. I mean, absolutely perfect weather, no wind. And so Jarrett goes out there and plays practice round. I mean, course is perfectly conditioned and everything. And he got done, he said, "Coach, I think I can go under par." I said, "I think you can too." I said, "This is going to be awesome." Yeah. So next day is day one of the tournament. We get up, walk out of the hotel. I kind of noticed at the hotel, the flag was a little shaky. Yeah. I thought, well, Jarrett Wynn might be a little higher today. Understatement of the year. We're talking 40 mile an hour, just straight winds. Yeah. And so Jarrett hit a very high ball. Well, blew him off the course. Yeah. And I believe he shot like an 88 that day and came back the next day with like an 84 and was not even in contention and played well. I mean, hit it well. It was just blue everywhere. Sure. And so on the way home, we were riding home. I said, "Jarrett, we're going to have to do something." Yeah. He said, "I've been thinking the same thing, Coach." He said, "I got to make some changes." And I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, "I got to learn to hit the ball lower." Which, it bores into the wind. And Jarrett was usually, he could move it both ways. He kind of liked hitting a draw back then. From that time we got home, until the next golf season.
Not in the middle of the season.
No. Time, patience, practice, repetition.
Right.
And he came out the next year, and he basically hit a low fade. And when I say fade, he's kind of like the pros. You know, my idea of a fade is it kind of goes, woo, like that.
Yeah.
Jarrett and the good guys, they'll bust it right down the middle, and then it goes, eat, and it falls, 5 yards to the right.
Right.
So anyhow, lowered it, kind of called it his punch fade, and he had it locked in. He played it all year. That year, I mean, I had never seen anybody play like. I mean, his driving accuracy, his iron play, it was off the charts. He won regional, he won sectional, and he won state. It's kind of like Triple Crown.
Yeah.
And just with that.
Right.
That change.
That's awesome.
And I mean, he owned it, and he played it the entire time.
Yeah. He was a great young man. I enjoyed having him in class.
Just a barrel of fun.
I still got a golf hat signed by him. So he gave that to me. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. Before we get into some other things, I wanted to say this too. I have coached more than football. I've coached, as I said, girls track, boys track, softball, wrestling. There's a term out there that I despise, and I know that you were, for 21 years, you coached golf, and there's a term that people use, they call it a minor sport. And I despise the term because that term is used a lot.
Yeah.
You got football and basketball, major sports, and then they kind of lump some of the other sports into what is called a minor sport. I despise that term. I always did, because minor to who? The kids that play.
The kids that play it.
The kids that play.
Their
the
passion.
Parents involved. It's their passion.
Right.
But any thoughts on that? Like you know as well as I do how much that meant to those boys.
And, totally.
And I know what you've meant to those boys, and I can tell. I've had numerous people since I started this say, "You've got to interview Coach Stout." Your guys. They message me or send me a Facebook. Coach, you gotta interview Mr. Stout, and because they love you and they appreciate what you did for them in the minor sport. Again, I despise that term, but we use it. People use it.
I do not look at our sport as minor at all.
Never.
And you know,
Never.
one of the greatest things that I think Marion Golf has done in the 21 years that I've had it is that I tell the boys, I said, you know what? This is a pretty special fraternity.
Yeah.
I mean, we are tight. I mean, the kids absolutely love it. And I've had so many that I've coached in the past. They come up. Like I said, I've only had 4 state champions. It would be great to have those every year. But you know, I've got kids who fell in love with golf.
Sure.
Because they were on the golf team.
Right.
I've got kids who have lifelong friendships with the other boys they made because of the golf team. I've got kids. Hey, coach, guess what? That my company, they love me in scrambles. Awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. And you know, we do little things like whenever we go to an away match, we eat out.
Yeah.
And you know, things like that. And
breaking bread, brother.
Oh yes,
breaking bread.
Dewey's Pizza and Chipotle and Qdoba and Quattros. I mean, you know, things like that. They remember that.
Of course.
And from year to year, you know, you'll get the kids going, hey, coach, we're going to Belleville Altoff. Yeah. Dewey's Pizza. And so, you know, it's like it becomes a rite of passage.
Of course, yeah.
And,
that's
you
cool.
know, it's the little things
Those
like
little
that.
traditions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we've tried to do traditions. And like I said, we keep it positive.
Yeah.
It's all positive. And I obviously, you would love to have state champions every year, but every year's got its blessings.
Yeah, amen, brother. I got kind of my bullet round now. You ready? Mm-hmm. These are things that I wanted to talk to you just about, kind of in just one after another. Your teaching career has been amazing, and I told Marty this, and I'll tell it again because I think it's worth telling. I've taught and coached a number of places, and when I came to Marion, a number of kids would say to me their favorite subject was math, and it was actually surprising me because I've heard that before, but I'd never heard it as often as I heard it at Marion, and I knew, because I've always believed this. I think it's true. when you find kids that love a subject, you find teachers that are doing a great job.
Yes, you do.
And I knew that when I started hearing that the math department was flat getting it done, and then when I got to work with you in the same hallway and watching the job that you did, again, taking something complicated, something that can be tough, and making it fun and making it simple. You have a gift for that, and I think it was obvious every day the kids loved your class.
Oh, Marty and I mean, he is Mario to my Luigi. You know, he is. I am Laurel to his Hardy, and you know we. No offense, Marty. I may have just paired him up with the heavier people. I don't know about that, but anyhow, we'll have to go back and check that. But you know, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And you know, we would banter back and forth in front of the kids,
They loved it.
and just
Yeah.
and you trick them into doing the subject is basically what it is.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had a lot of kids that don't have me, or parents will say things like, "Well, Stan's easy," and I said, you know, you can say that, but one of the huge gifts that I think I bring to teaching, I think it's a truth in my life all through, is I don't keep secrets. Like I don't hide information. I cover every section of every chapter just like everybody else does. But you know the best way to have the kids learn something? Show them what you want them to learn. Like I've never been big on a pop quiz. I've never been big on
surprise.
Hey, surprise. Hey, we're going to have Unit 7 test tomorrow. What should we study? Unit 7.
Yeah.
You know, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know, why don't you lay out? These are the types of problems you're going to have. Work on them.
Yeah.
You need my help? Come and see me. Because, I mean, time, patience, practice, repetition.
Yeah.
If you give the kids a chance to put in the time and be patient, it's amazing what they can do.
You'll miss it?
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
You know,
But
it's
you're
time.
ready,
It's
right?
time.
Yeah.
You know, it's I the past 4 years since COVID, things have become a lot more Chromebook oriented and online, and that's just not me.
Yeah. Well,
that's just not me. I'm still more of a paper pencil. Let me give you a situation and let you think about it type person.
Yeah.
The kids want to go, I got this. Click. Look, there's the answer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's the fun in that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's time. It's
Yeah.
time. It's time to pass the baton to some 24-year-old who has great ideas and lots of energy. And who knows what I'll go off. I might start my own YouTube snake channel. You know, I might start Stanley's snake channel.
Well, you are famous for your Facebook posts regarding animals.
I love my animals.
Snakes, frogs. You got a pet rabbit. So,
I know.
So that will continue, I'm sure, and even be magnified now in retirement because you have more time, right?
Yes, I will.
You go to Snake Road?
Snake Road. I went yesterday.
Are you serious?
I went yesterday.
Yeah.
I saw no serpents, but I did see a couple dozen salamanders.
Yeah.
And I did see a first I'd never seen before. I was shining my little flashlight into the crevice of the rocks. I saw a ball of ladybugs.
Oh, wow.
I never knew. I never even thought how ladybugs winter, but they winter in these gigantic.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either until yesterday. So see, life's fun. I mean, you never know what you're going to find.
Well, I am anxious to see what you do in retirement because I know it's going to be exciting and fun, and you're going to find something cool to do. And
I might take you to Snake Road.
I can't wait to go, and I think my grandson wants to go too.
Oh,
but,
definitely.
We also shared a love for coffee in our hallway,
my
and
goodness.
you introduced me to French press. And the first time I took a drink of French press coffee, I was like,
You had
what?
a body shiver. You had an all over.
So I was like,
What?
we were grinding Dunkin' Donut beans fresh and French pressing them in the hallway of the old building.
You remember that khaki, tawny, foamy top on it? Oh my goodness.
I've never got so much teaching done in a day at all. I was ready to go, man.
Oh, that was.
Also, something that people don't know about you is sports memorabilia.
Oh, yes.
You are big on autographs. You have a great collection. And one of the cool things, if people don't know this, is that you not only collect the autographs, but you have stories to tell.
A lot of them I do.
A lot of them have a great story, and people love it, Coach Stout. I mean, they love to hear the story behind you waiting for an autograph. You had an interaction with a player.
And it could even be a minor player that no one's ever heard of. But when you put the life experience to it, it makes it so cool. I owe all that to my uncle, Gene Green.
Yeah.
You may know Gene from SIU and announcing football games and everything. But Gene got me into that, and he has got a killer collection of his own. And same thing, he would, I remember when I was young, probably 8 to 10 years old, he had pictures on his wall, and that's when I started loving baseball and footballs when I was 8. 1975 Super Bowl with the Steelers and the Cowboys.
Oh, yeah.
My eyes was like I loved it. And 1975 World Series with the Red Sox and the Reds. Oh my gosh! I mean that is when it just blew up on me.
That's awesome.
So he would tell me, hey, this guy Ray Blades, I met him and he lives over in Indiana, and little stories like that. Ray played for the Cardinals way back in like the 40s. And so Gene has tons of stories too. He used to be sports information director at Rolla. Yeah. And so he had all kinds of, and I mean, my eyes just blew up, and I thought, I want to do this too.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. And I love the stories you share. And you and I had this thing where we love to find old vintage pictures online or something of an old football player. It's awesome,
it's awesome.
And how much older men look back in those days.
31 years old with no teeth and no hair and a gray beard.
You look at the old Packers or the old Steelers, and then you go back to the Bears and the years ago, and the guys look so mature.
Let me ask you, like, what is like your first thing, football memory-wise, professional football, that you remember that you think, I love this?
It's the Dolphins, and that's why I'm a Dolphin fan to this day. I was 1972. I was 6 years old. I was 8 years old, sorry.
Oh, you're a bandwagon.
Yeah, I'm a bandwagon jumper.
That's right.
My family was big Red fans, and they were my NFC team. But the Dolphins were winning in '72. The first Super Bowl I remember, '73, they won again. I jumped on that bandwagon.
That's right, and rode it till this day.
And we haven't won since then.
But you're still a bandwagon.
But I'm still
on
but that's where it came from, and so followed the Dolphins my whole career, and was let down again this year, but still I'm staying with it.
You had some nice little rays of hope this year.
We did, and we had some rays of hope during the Marino years. But in closing, I want to say this, I mean this. You have a son that's a baseball player, and he's played golf and he's played football for a while. But I think you're probably more known as being an amazing palm dad, a dance dad, and I think that's a really cool thing that you have. You've embraced whatever your children have done. Shelby and Emma have been dancers, and you are fully engaged in that, and you're part of that. And I think that's a cool thing.
It is an absolutely amazing sport to watch.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about athletes.
Yes.
And flexibility.
Yes.
And like I of course I am ignorant enough about it that if I were judging, everyone would get gold medals. I mean, it's all incredible.
Right.
Like I have to ask my wife, was that a good one?
Yeah.
Because it looked great to me.
Yeah.
But I tell the girls at high school, and I've told my own daughters this, it's so cool to watch somebody with a skill that you could never do.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, someone could approach me and say, hey, Stan, I see your daughters are both dancers. They must have got those genetics from you. Here is $10,000. All you have to do is go practice for 3 straight days and do 20 seconds of their dance. I'd say, dude, keep your money. I'm not going to waste my time. There is absolutely no way I could do that. Just like my son hitting a baseball. I was a pretty good baseball player. I was kind of a little punchy hitter. My son, when he hits a ball, I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's
cool. It's so cool to watch your kids do things that you could never. David, skateboarding.
Exactly.
I mean, don't you just look at that and you're like, absolutely.
There was a period of time where David was skating at still skates at a high level, even where he's at now and his age. But when I would look at him some days when he was younger and think, that looks so easy. And I got on a board one day and I fell and I said, I'm never doing that.
Did you look around?
But I think it was an appreciation of, wow, the skill set, the skill level. And the amount of time, those 4 things you talked about, my son did that with skateboarding and just would do it 6-8 hours a day in the summertime. But I love the fact that you embrace what your kids are involved in, and you are all in for it, and that's a really cool thing. Because
I just love living life in awe. I mean, I always try to go through my life on a regular basis and just look at something and be in awe. Like my wife.
Yes.
The couple times I've been in her classroom, She teaches 3rd grade. She's taught 1st grade. I am spellbound to watch her interact and lead those kids. I mean, if I had those kids, we would have 3 snacks and played kickball and watched a movie and done writing and science and math, and it'd be 9:45 in the morning.
Yeah. Okay.
But
now
she
what?
stretches that out and she interacts with them. I could never do that.
Yeah.
And I've taught for 33 years.
We're both high school teachers. The grade school people are called teachers, but what they do and what we do is completely
so
different. And kudos to them. And your wife Erica is an amazing teacher. My wife got the pleasure of working with her, and you guys are great friends, great couple, and I appreciate you both so much. And I appreciate you being my guest and sharing so much. And I want people to know, you're a great teacher, you're a great man of faith, a great family man. You've been an outstanding outstanding golf coach, and in one of the darkest times of my life, you stood right there by my side. And without going into detail, it meant a lot to me. And it showed what I already knew, the heart of the man, and it meant a lot. So I just thank you for being here and being a part of my life and being a neighbor of mine
I know.
and sharing that hallway in 2 different buildings. And thank you for being a great light in the school system, the public school system. And you're going to be missed, brother, I'm telling you.
You are missed also.
Well,
so.
I appreciate that. But thanks for being here, man.
Hey.
I learned a lot today.
Well,
I should have been doing this a long time ago.
This is life.
Yeah,
I
amen.
mean, this is life. And,
Yeah.
none of us, let alone podcasts, there's that little technology thread in it. None of us spend enough time just visiting anymore.
No, we don't.
I mean, not even with our families, not with our friends.
Yeah.
Everything is so breakneck.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome just to be able to sit down for an hour.
Well, I did this to pull back the curtain and let the light shine on these coaches that I knew were doing what they do at an amazing high level. And with each one, this is the 14th, I think, or 15th
wow.
that I've done. And every time I go home amazed at what I'm hearing, and it's even better than I even thought it could be, and it's because of people like you and the guests I've had. So thanks, Stan.
Well, I love you, brother.
Love you,
I
man.
really do.
Appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening again. I want to thank Crown Brew again. Our buddy Ross. I need to get his face on camera at some point, but Ross Swinford Media Group.
He's got a nice grin right now.
He's a great guy, man. I want to thank Adrenaline Fundraising, and again, appreciate the feedback, the positivity. I hope this is as good for you as it's been for me, and we're able to share the insight of these great coaches and find out what's in their heart and how much this means to our community and to our schools, having people like Stan Stout doing what they do. So thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.